Hello, everyone. This is Rob Brink from ParTech. We're excited that you guys are joining us today for this webinar. Welcome to today's segment, the topic of the Passport to Success 4.1D features brought to you by ParTech's Customer Success team. The newly developed Customer Success department at PAR is focused on developing processes, programs, and tools that help drive the continued success of PAR's customers. They do this by facilitating client onboarding, retention, delivery, overall value with the goal of achieving our customers' desired outcome. Just wanted to let everyone know that all attendees are in listen-only mode and are muted for sound quality. This webinar will be recorded and a copy of the recording will be distributed after the event. If there are any questions during the webinars, please submit them in the question panel, as there will be a Q&A session at the end. If your question is not answered due to time constraint, we will follow up with you and answer your questions via email. We will do our best to get to all of them. Our presenter joining us today is Jose Simeo.
Hello there. Thanks everybody for joining. And for those of you that have never heard Mr. Rob Brinky read from a script, that's what you get. That's what you get. But thanks, Rob, for the introduction. Today, we want to try and keep this kind of loose and interactive. So definitely, like Rob had mentioned, take advantage of the questions dialogue in the GoToMeeting console. With anything that comes up, we'll try and hit those as we're talking about a specific subject, but we'll make sure to save time towards the end for sure as well. This webinar is also going to get recorded, so you'll be able to watch this at a later date if you ever need to go back to this, or you can follow up with questions to our Customer Success Department or our sales team with anything that you may want to know further info about after today's session. So, with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's goal is to really convey what we've put into 4.1D. And it is the latest release that we're going to be rolling out to the production servers for Brink in the coming weeks. It's already begun. And this release contains not only new features, but also a lot of enhancements to existing features, as well as hundreds of bug fixes, everybody's favorite advancement in software. And so today we're going to review the 4.1D specific features. And while all of the other elements that we see here in bullets were all included in 4.1D, how we do development internally is bracketed into different kind of iterative versions. And so we have smaller subset versions that we're including in D, and I've broken those out just so you can kind of see how we structure the advancement of the software. So with 4.1D, we're going to look at some new kitchen behavior, the new master offline behavior that comes into play as part of our advancement of kind of independency within the terminals, new reports, and some enhancements around the API, new fields, and how those fields are used. Included in 4.1D from 4.1C, also new manager functions that you can do without actually requiring a clock in. And those are actually just job-specific functions. They're just typically things that we see assigned to salaried managers. Kitchen and printer modifier view and consolidation, how you can sort those in the KDS, how you can sort the cards in the KDS, as well as modifiers, and how you can group those on the receipt have all been improved. Key ingredient summary is something that we've been working on for a little while now, and it's had a few different iterations, but we've added some ability to control some customization around key ingredient summaries. And then along the lines of more kitchen improvements, master bump for KDS, something that's been a long time request that we're happy to finally get included. Also deferred modifiers, which is a huge improvement to conversational ordering to allow your interactions with a customer to be just, kind of more streamlined and fluid. So you're able to enter the order in as they're describing it and come back to all of the required elements later. Compound tax support obviously is a big one, especially if you're in a state that uses or in a region that uses compound taxes. Roundup charity support is something we pretty much see as a request from all lines of business because everyone likes to give, and the Roundup method is one of the most simple and effective ways to get that participation from your customers and guests. And then some new loyalty integrations with relevant loyalty, and then obviously Q&A towards the end. So with that, I'm going to go through and I'm going to open up the questions dialog just so I can see it in case anything comes up, but so definitely take advantage of that. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started and look at some of the features that are coming out in 4.1D. Some easy ones to begin with. The visual indication that we can provide in a kitchen display has been expanded, and now there's some additional behaviors around recall. We can now control when what the color is for the border of a recalled order or item, depending on how you have the kitchen set up. And we also have a new method of assigning a button to a bump bar for you to be able to recall the last order without having to go in and go to the recall screen. So that's not covered here in the slide, but this is the recall configuration within Settings Editor for KDS, and those are some of the enhancements that we put around recall. This is that image of the screenshot for the kitchen keypad control with the last bumped order behavior being programmable and the integrated controllers that we're using. And again, it's just to streamline the kitchen's capabilities to get to orders without having to navigate through all of the additional ones. So pretty handy feature. This one is something that came up from a few different customers as well. But whether you're in a situation where someone is trying to order an item plain, or you have a general substitution method that you have for you wanting it, an item a certain way or one way or a different way, we now have the ability to have a controllable modifier button that essentially just removes all of the modifiers from an item. And you tie that to a modifier control that you can set up, and when you actually click it, it actually removes all the modifiers. And I have that configured here, so what I'm going to do is actually just pull it up to show you what that looks like when we remove all of the modifiers on an item. I've got one of our sample databases here, and if I just go and add something like this Texas cheeseburger, you'll see that the conversational ordering buttons have indicated the default ingredients that I have configured for this Texas cheeseburger, which includes cherry tomatoes, sauteed onions, jalapenos, and romaine. If I choose this button that says plain no mods, you can see it adds the modifier rule, and this is controllable text that you can set up. So it can say anything you want here, but it'll go in and remove all of the custom modifiers that were preset for that item. Plain is probably the most specific example that you can think of, but as you can imagine, especially if you're going in and replacing a whole subset of items, this can be a quick way to go in and deselect all of the included modifiers that you have configured within Brink. But pretty straightforward, but still a very, very handy feature. And let me jump a couple back to my slides where I was. Next thing that we want to talk about is consolidating like items from combo orders. And we have this set up for the order lane now, KDS, and receipts. And you can see in the past on the left, we have an example of the coupon where it would before show all of the individual items that made up the combo in their own row. And on the right, we have the order control, or the receipt that now just shows those tabulated into a single total underneath the combo. So it saves a little paper, makes it a little bit cleaner to read. And again, we do have that on the kitchen as well as the kitchen chits for displays and printing across the restaurant. So I talked earlier about some of those new job-specific functions that allow you to kind of do things in new ways. We have one here that allows a job, and so this is not cashier-specific or manager-specific, but instead this is job-specific. You can have the situation where an employee does not have to have a cash drawer assigned in order to apply promotions and discounts. In the past, they actually had to have a cash drawer assigned to the register that they were doing the discount on. Now you can have someone like a key holder or a shift leader or a manager who is not assigned to a cash drawer in any way, can still be the person designated to come in and approve all of the discounts and promotions applied to an order. So, and let me open up one other thing here. Let's do this so I can see it. Okay. A question, can we use that recall last order on the KDS screen with touch screen, or is that only for bump bar? It's only for bump bar at this point. It is for the programmable controls that we use with the hardware integration of a KDS controller. And it is not on the touch screen interface at this point, but I can assume it's going to get there eventually. The next thing that I want to talk about is, let me make sure I didn't do it, is the ability for like items that have been sent to a kitchen to be converted into a combo. There's a lot of text there that kind of describes that same thing, but if you have the auto combo behavior enabled within Brink and you order something like an entree, a side, and a drink, if you have auto combo turned on, it'll automatically turn that into a combo. Well, in the past, it wouldn't update the KDS if it was sent on the fly to showcase that the combo is now what is being ordered. And I actually have that set up in my kitchen screen as well. If we go back to the same order that I was using, where my Texas cheeseburger is included, and I go in, and let me move my kitchen screen over here so you can see it a little bit better as I cover up the key ingredient summary. You'll notice that my on-the-fly KDS is set up to show each individual item, or show the entire order as a whole. So it's set up in order mode, where if I go in and I add a small fries, it adds the small fries to the lane. And then if I go in and add a small drink, the auto combo behavior that has always existed on the POS now is going to be reflected on the KDS screen as well. So we can see the combos there. Simple feature, but for usability, especially for understanding the entirety and completeness of the order, because combos could have a whole lot of other required elements like packaging or any specific inserts that you may have. This is just another enhancement to Kitchen in general. Let me see. Question comes in for that KDS recall order feature. What is the difference between recall order and recall previous order, recall last order? Does this jump back to the previous order? No, recall order will actually bring you to what we have set up in our KDS here, where you actually see the recall order screen, which is on my other screen, so you can't see it, but it actually brings up a list of all of the recalled orders, whereas the programmable button now recalls just the last bumped order. So it's kind of a all or the very last one behavior that's enabled with that new feature. Another question, is the auto combo feature hard-coded or can it be configured by KDS? It is not configured per kitchen display or kitchen queue. It is set up at the ordering level. It is not something that you can have auto combo on one KDS and not on another. That's where destination-specific overrides or routing can be used instead to determine how you want items that are included as part of a combo to be routed through the kitchen. All right, so let me go back here. We also added for a good percentage of our customers throughout the US here and Canada that use the T-Flex coin dispensers. This is a hardware integration that is now supported. So if you use change counters or these coin dispensers of any kind, it's a pretty big maker and vendor of this, and it is now supported within Brink. Okay, so this was a big one. The new master offline behavior. This, I mentioned before, is part of our evolving the standalone nature of Brink to run as a hybrid hosted application without an active internet connection to our servers. For those of you that are aware of our current version of standalone mode, when you lose connection to the server, the local terminals all kind of still communicate with each other, constantly continue to try and ping the server, and they're always kind of connected together so orders are available and accessible from one register to the next. Well, that was becoming problematic because when there was a circumstance where an order was opened on one terminal and closed on another, and the server was not aware of that connection because it was in offline mode, it created issues. And so as part of the involvement to build a more robust offline mode, what has changed with 4.1D is essentially when you are in offline mode, meaning that you don't have a connection to the server or to any other systems, what will happen is you're only going to be able to edit an order on the register that it was originated from. So this is going to be an area of the application that will continue to evolve, but the main component of this is what's included in 4.1D today. And the real behavioral difference that you'll see is that you simply won't be able to edit orders that originated from one register to the other. And then you will see this dialog. Pretty straightforward. Due to a connection error, the selected order can only be viewed modified on register 1. And so that is how the new offline orders work. Got some questions here. What about online orders? Always send to register 1 or master. If down, will they try register 2? Offline or online orders will always try and communicate down to the store, and we actually validate at the server level to make sure that an online order was delivered to the store. It's one of the guarantees that we can provide with our online ordering. And so as long as there's a connection to the store will then provide that authentication that they've received the order, and then the customer placing the online order will get the confirmation page. If there's obviously no connection to the store, the order will not be able to be sent down to the store and then be processed accordingly. So let me see here, next one. A couple of new reports here, the tax audit report. This just gave a more specific view into how taxes are used, and it's a line item view that is going to be configurable in the options section for all of the taxes that you have set up. But what the real change here is it shows because it's an audit report, we have obviously lots of different types of audits available in the system as reports that we make available to you through admin portal. And something like the business date audit, for those of you who have ever looked at that gigantic piece of information that gets created every single day through all the transactional flow that we're creating. This allows you to go back in and see when a tax was changed. That's what this audit shows for lots of regulatory reasons. Also a new report, the taxes by location report. It's just another understanding of how taxes are configured at the location level, and it'll identify all of the taxes that you have set up and show a column view for those and that tax percentages. As our customer base grows and we're dealing with more and more brands that have franchisee arrangements and are in the franchisee space, and they have to support that, this is a great and handy way to have a high-level view of all of the taxes configured across the group. Simple API change that would be effectively very difficult to demonstrate, but essentially we've exposed the price changes functions through the settings API, as well as added some new encoding methods around specific fields. The integrations team and the developers and support team that supports our integrators have kind of been ahead of this and are always working with our partners to identify how we can expand the API, and this was just another area that was an iterative improvement, but something that makes a big difference, especially when you're trying to externally control your system and the pricing within it from a third-party tool. All right, so I mentioned before that we were going to look at some of the internal features that we've done internally, that we've gone through and built into the application that are all included in 4.1D, but for us, we're a part of a separate internal release. But with these, and some of these I'm going to show, but a lot of them I'm just going to talk to. We talked about some of those new functions where managers have the ability to have certain capabilities available to them without actually having to log in. The ability to assign promos and discounts specifically is a huge one. Additional descriptions to items. Essentially for the item note field, we expanded that to 200 characters. You should never really get into a circumstance where you rely on that for customization, because what you can set up and configure for modifiers and modifier flow and all of that is pretty extensive. But we did have a lot of circumstances where item notes or custom values were being fed in through the API. And so that has been expanded through the API as well, but item notes can now be 200 characters in length. Punch redemption codes, Punch for our customers that utilize Punch, it's a very popular loyalty and retention application and service. They have evolved their tool over time, and we're trying to keep in lockstep with the capabilities that they offer. And so switching to an alphanumeric character support for Punch redemption codes, whether they be input in through something like a QR code or manually input, is now supported. If you're using the old method of combos, where you actually set up you don't use combos and the combo type and combo components, but instead you use modifiers to make up your combos, modifiers themselves can now be selected and customized or deleted or removed in some way. And it's just another enhancement around some of the flexibility that we can offer with how you set up combos, because I've seen it done a whole bunch of different methods. It's all really about how you want to maintain the data and how you want to see and view what you're actually tracking in reports. But next one, the mask the pay rate field in admin portal. This is something that is a change to what we set up for roles, and it's really around circumstances where you might have two assistant managers that have the same job title, but you don't want them to be able to see each other's pay because that is not the same. And so now we have the ability to mask the pay rate field. So two people who have the same role can now have a hierarchy associated with them, so they can determine if they are able to see someone within that same role's pay rate. Pretty straightforward, but very useful if that's ever been an issue for you. Next one is use deferred modifiers with conversational ordering, and I'm going to kind of walk through an example of this here now. Deferred modifiers are something that has come up quite a few times, and it's really allows you, I talked about it before, to input the order as the customer is describing it or saying it. And oftentimes, the rules that we put in around modification or substitution, where you have a required flow, where if you're, building something like a customized sandwich, you might have all of the elements set up as modifier groups that they have to navigate to. Well, in the past, you weren't able to move on from one item to the other without fulfilling the requirements for that item. And in this example, I've got a build your own pizza here in this database. And when I walk through this build your own pizza has 3 required modifier groups here. And there's a flow setup on this. So if I go in and I choose my dough, but let's say I don't choose my sauce or my cheese because the customer said, actually, I want to build your own pizza, a regular build your own pizza, and then I want a burger and I want whatever, but they didn't actually give you all of the elements that you have as required. I can simply click done here, and it shows me with this number in parentheses, the number of required options or modifiers that I have from the respective modifier groups. If I try and total this order out and close it out, it'll tell me that the order has deferred modifiers. Please select the required modifiers. I can then go back in and customize the options, because it also takes me back right to the item that I was just unfinished with, essentially. I can go in and choose the options that I have to fulfill the requirements. You can see those negative values from the modifier groups, and the modifier group names have now been removed, and it shows me what my build your own pizza actually entails. So deferred modifiers, again, it's just another part of the evolving state of conversational ordering for us. And you'll see more improvements to that in the coming future. But for right now, this should allow the ease of accepting an order, hopefully to be simplified, as well as the ability to move past an item when you have requirements set up for it, so the customer is less impacted. But with that, let me go back here, check on our questions. Okay, to pull this back up. There we go. The dynamic button colors in the modifier system panel is just a way of controlling what you have selected or automatically included. For the system mod panel that we have set up, when you're not using conversational ordering or you're using the default modifier behavior, just some more usability tweaks around that, those can be displayed. The dialogue for the register when you're waiting for the payment device was enhanced to be a little bit more descriptive. Oftentimes, when there was an issue on the processor side where connectivity was either lagging or lost, the messages that we provided were kind of generic in nature and nondescript across a series of circumstances, and now those have been enhanced so you know exactly what's happening and when. And those payment type of integration improvements is what we'll always go back through. Next question, or next one here is, users now only allowed to edit shifts in the current business date. This was an enhancement that was done partly to support a lot of our integrations, and especially with some of the more financial or inventory based, financial or labor-based integrations. We were seeing a lot of circumstances where shifts being edited through the API were causing issues just depending on when they were done, whether they were done from the register and vice versa. So now to limit the impact that can, and just really confusion that that can exist on the integration side, you can now only edit shifts for the current business date on the register. The next one is the accept the loyalty card swipe for gift customer information function on VeriFone points. It's another enhancement. And I see one of the questions comes in, have you made any other improvements on pin pads for VX805? To clarify how our semi-integrated solutions work, we integrate with the middleware. The middleware then integrates with the payment device. So the support that we have with the middleware, whether it be VeriFone Point or DataCap or any of the other ones that we support, is where the feature set is going to be supported from. And in this example with VeriFone Point, the get customer information, whether it be their phone number, the first and last name, whatever the lookup information would typically be, we can now have that pass through the external payment device from the loyalty card directly to the POS. So pretty straightforward. Another enhancement around the payment integrations is now for just tender retail, and what we've done there is just allowed more description in when you're actually selecting the payment device, what you're actually doing, whereas you're not just tendering it out, you're going through the proper external method. Swap combo components by selecting the component on the order list and selecting new qualifying item. That is just allows you to replace the item without actually having to delete it the first time. We already supported, size groups, and depending on what you're doing, how you have your combos set up, we can do a lot around that. But this is just another enhancement that was included in an older build of Brink that will be included in 4.1D. With regards to some of the kitchen enhancements that you'll see in the next release, really everything that we did was around the display control, what you can display, how you can display it, the order in which you can display it, and how the items are consolidated in that display. The first thing that I'll show you, if I pull this down, is the key ingredient summary control. Here I have it configured on the left-hand monitor of my screen, but if I go back and let me open up Settings Editor here, the kitchen display setting, or excuse me, the key ingredient summary setting is able to be customized. So give me 1 second. I have this up, but it logged me out. If we go down here, and we look at the kitchen queue, we have a tab here for key ingredient summaries. And this display is just set up in a kitchen queue called kitchen, and everything routes to this just simply because of the flow I have in this demo lab. But this is where you set up your key ingredient summaries. And from the key ingredient summaries I've set up for burgers, fries, pizzas, and onion rings here, it'll always go in and give me a total count for everything that I have ordered within the kitchen. It's all going to be depending on whether it's sent or if it's unsent, whether you have that configured to show, but it'll show unsent orders as well. And here it is on the left-hand side. If I go in and I just put it across something like the top, you can also control the screen percentage and the number of rows and columns that you have set up for your key ingredient summary, as well as the colors. If I go in and I simply publish this out, we'll see this restart in just a couple of seconds here. And when it does reopen, you'll find that our key ingredient summary that was on the left-hand side of the kitchen display is now going to be configured at the top. So a real simple tweak on how it actually looks, but depending on what you're trying to do, or just really where the display is actually living, it could make a big impact to how the kitchen order flow is created. And here's Brink over here. And here is my KDS with the key ingredient summary at the top of the screen. So that is my key ingredient summary flow. And let me go back in and open up my slides. For those of you that didn't see it real quick, let me go back and show you, because this was another feature that I think is mentioned in another slide, but the auto bump behavior is now able to be configured. We can go in and actually set this up. So after a certain amount of time, it'll automatically leave the screen. This is going to be something like a big timeout. I think we can do 4 digits of seconds here, but if it's something like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you want it automatically to go and not affect the rest of your speed of service reports, you can now set that up right there. And something that I'll show you, I don't know if you will be able to actually hear the audio, but we now have a destination-specific audio feature that is supported at the KDS. So when I actually go in and I create an item, I think I set it up for pickup here. When I just ring this order in with that specific destination, you didn't hear it maybe through the webinar, but it actually just played a little Super Mario Brothers 1-up audio file, which was just a WAV file. Different audio types are supported, and those are all set up in the kitchen now. If I go to Options and Kitchen, there's a Sound section. And then the sound section is where you can set the destination specific. And this really came from the need for people wanting to have audio awareness when something like an online order came in or a catering order came in. So it is a destination specific function. And the trigger for when the audio file to play can be just when an order is sent, or when an order is sent and there's nothing else there in the KDS already. So implying that the kitchen is empty, no one is standing at the make line, and an online order gets sent in. Now an audio file, which can be connected either using a standard headphone or USB integrated speaker to the kitchen controller, is going to allow you to actually play an audio file whenever that comes in. And when you go, if you want to see, there's also now a sounds section here in Settings Editor that's going to allow you to add an audio file. You simply download the audio file that you want to include, close Add Audio, and navigate to that file. So that is that feature. Now, let me go back here. We also include the timestamp now for recalled orders in that recall orders screen, as well as the total transaction time, the actual time that you're able to, the time that the order was input, is something that you can now see on the order recall screen. Question, is the audio file a continuous sound until that order is bumped or a one-time noise? It is a one-time noise. It is going to play when the audio file is configured for that specific destination when an order is sent to the kitchen, or if it's in unsent mode when it appears in the kitchen, so it's just going to get there. When that destination-specific order is live in the kitchen, it will play that audio file one time, not continuously. So if you want it to play continuously, choose a very large audio file or a longer audio file. We also did some other API enhancements earlier this release, where we added the credit app command in XML, so we actually capture the mobile number through the API for an order. The full Vantiv token is now exposed in the API for those of you who use those for processing. The settings API now tracks time-based changes and they're set in the price changes section within settings editor. And we have the integration with VeriFone Point Enterprise to support the full 16-digit Vantiv token that they now use, and it's exposed in two new elements of the API, the get order API and get orders methods. All right, some other set of features from earlier in the year, and in case you guys couldn't tell, 4.1D is a giant release. We're like 20 slides of features so far, and I didn't even hit them all that are included. So towards the end of this, we'll jump to the release notes and make sure everybody has awareness of those. And again, you can follow up with any questions. But from an earlier release, now individual items can be selected for promotion qualifications, not an order-specific requirement. The header and footer count for the duplicates of receipts, something when you're actually going in and controlling how the receipts are printed or how you want that flows, you can kind of change how that is set up. Relevant loyalty is now fully integrated within Brink. So if you are interested in relevant loyalty or expanding what your current loyalty offering is, they're another partner that you can now look at for with integrated support. Configurable tax brackets. Again, as we're continuing to expand our footprint to new regions, what we do capability-wise with tax brackets, compound taxes, and taxation in general is going to get more extensive for sure. The ability for a single employee to be logged into different registers at the same time. This came up as a need from a whole bunch of different places, but really it just allows you to especially when we thought a lot of the drive-through, where there was like maybe an order taking station and then an order paying station, and the person responsible for both needed to be able to work from two separate registers and only have a cash drawer on one. Another one is now, and this is something that's been asked for a long time, and one of the first things I noticed when I started here with Brink, but now we have the ability to automatically hide an inactive items button on the screen. And so in the past, when you deactivated an item for any reason, whether it was availability or just whether it was seasonal, when that item was inactive, the button still existed in the layout. Now, for all inactive items, the button is just hid by default. The button is still there within layout for you to edit and control and configure however you want, but when the item is inactive, it will not show on the POS control. The buttons on the screen do not reflow or change or move in any way. They'll act as if the original button was still there. It is simply not available to be seen or chosen in any way. So it just simplifies the experience for your staff and cashiers who actually bring up orders, so minimize confusion regarding inactive items. The transaction count per labor hour, it's just another total that we had enhanced around a specific report. So the total number of transactions are identified in that per employee, or per labor hour, excuse me. Add the option to suppress $0 amounts on the checkout report. If you didn't have discounts, if you didn't have any of the fields that would be normally associated with the checkout, because they were zero for whatever reason, now they'll just not appear on the checkout at all. again, to minimize that paper as well as the congestion of information. Support for compound taxes. This is something that's come up quite a bit. And again, it's just configured at the tax level itself. Whether you want it to be inclusive or compound, you can just set directly within Settings Editor. Allow for duplicate employee display name values. This is something that I'd heard, somewhat often, just because it was a limitation that it didn't really make sense why it was a limitation. So now you can have two employees with the same name have the same display name value. In the past, you had to, how it was worked around was, Mike S and Mike J versus Mike and Michael or whatever. Now you can have them be set up the same. Restrict modifier substitutions. That's just all about modifier rules and enhancements around that. Select the modifier in the order list control. We talked about that one because with 4.1b is where we've allowed the ability to select the modifier, and then 4.1c is where we allow the ability to swap it. Added support for roundup charities, deferred modifiers, and managing bank deposits within the register. There's a couple I want to show here. We already looked at deferred modifiers, but the roundup charity control is something that is, like I brought up earlier, kind of universal now across the country as a method for getting people to round up to the next dollar. And so the first thing you'll do is, the first thing that you actually need to do is set up a non-revenue, non-tax item. And once you have that item, you then essentially create a charity that's linked to that item and choose what items you want that charity to be applicable to, this roundup benefit. And I've got in my POS now an empty order here. I'll just order small fries. You can see my subtotal is 149. My total with tax is 163. On my payment screen, I have this roundup charity configured. When I click that, it automatically will round up to the next dollar and added the 37 cents difference between my previous total to the order, which brings me to the next dollar. So it's really simple to set up. It's something that you can make time or date specific, auto apply, or inclusive to just applicable to specific items. I just did everything here just for the purpose of this demo. But the roundup feature is a new enhancement with 4.1d that you can definitely take advantage of. Question here for roundup: why would you want to configure some items to be eligible and others not? To the person who submitted that, I would say I don't often ask our customers why they want to do things because it's a matter of what they want to do. You might have some higher dollar items not applicable. You might have circumstances where you maybe retail items, whether you're selling T-shirts or something like that, where you're tracking it from a different revenue center or taxation is coming from a different method. But it's not so much why you would want to, but it's just simply to allow you to be able to differentiate between those two subsets of items within your product mix. Not a really good reason why, but it's really just about allowing you to control that at a very granular level. All right, go back to the slides. Some other in-kitchen enhancements that we included with this release, essentially this top one, the ability to print chips for only modified or certain items. This was what we considered, the exception, where I only want this sandwich comes this way every time, and I want it to print out in this method every single time. But I only want it to print over here if it's been customized or it's been modified in some way. And so exception routing, this has been called a few different things, but it really just allows you to have more control over how specific items are routed through the kitchen. Following that, when you reroute a kitchen display or a kitchen queue from the register, typically those settings would be reset to what they are configured at the location level from within settings editor at the end of day. When end of day ran and all the processes were completed, it would go back to the location level settings. Now, when I reroute it from the POS, those settings are retained for both the displays and queues. So for whatever reason, you got busy all of a sudden, so you rerouted half the orders to this new kitchen queue, they'll stay and persist until the next day, so you'll have to manually go back in and reroute them. The 200 character improvement in item notes, we saw that already, or we talked about that. Auto bumping, we saw that in the kitchen queue dialog. Adding support for master bump from kitchen queues, we talked about that. That's a huge one, especially if you're using it in something like an expo station, or you just want to bump it from all of the screens because it's been made. You can now do that. The ability for 0 to be displayed for non-existing key ingredient summaries. You can actually choose whether you want it to be blank or show 0, as well as the specifying of the sort order for kitchen displays. We had already done that in an earlier release for kitchen chits in the sort priority. Now it's supported in the KDS visual display. So with that, I have gone through quite a few of the individual features that we wanted to talk about from D. But what I'd like to do now is go through and invite you to chime in with some questions, go through if you have anything. I'm going to pull up the release notes instead of that questions dialog to show you, and I think I should be able to send it as a link as well. If I go to the 4.1D release notes, part of why I also broke out the iterative releases with 4.1B, C, and D is because that's how our release notes are structured. You can see where each change derived from our side. But the release notes are available. Let me see. They will be included in the email that goes out after this, but I did just send them to the entire audience so you can take a look at this. This is where you can see all of the new features that we included. It looks like 26, 24, so 60 features, and then bug fixes like crazy. So with that, we'll jump to the questions dialog. Let's see what we got here. Give me 1 second. All right. Let's see here. Lots of questions around when your specific server is going to get updated. So let me go ahead and address that. We are in the initial phases of rolling out through all of our servers today. And in the coming weeks, I will say, you should be getting a notification for your specific server. It will be sent out to you 7 days prior to the production upgrade to make you aware. The upgrade process is pretty straightforward. It happens in the middle of the night. And we have lots of people that go in and watch that to ensure that it goes smoothly. But the updated schedule we will be publishing in the coming weeks, and you will get a notification. That's the big takeaway. You will get a notification 7 days prior to your upgrade taking place. So you can be on the lookout for that. If you have any further questions regarding release schedule or time frame, we'll be able to provide it shortly, but feel free to reach out to customer success on that. Let me see here. Next one. Do you provide user manuals or training documentation on these changes? Yes. The admin portal guide that you'll see when a server has been updated will reflect the new features. It'll be the 4.1D version of the documentation, essentially. And we also create a subset document that is kind of just the 4.1D specific features that we've added that is also linked from the server from within admin portal, the documentation section under help. Next one. Try and find one here. Can you have multiple charities set up? Absolutely. Yes, you can use the Roundup charity or any other charity within a single order. And you can set up multiple charities that are Roundup charities as well. But after you round it up to the next dollar, I believe it will just keep it at that dollar because of how the Roundup behavior works. When will new API documentation be available? The 4.1D API documentation has been updated. So if you are an integrator or reseller that works with our API support team, they will be able to provide that to you. And so you can follow up with API support for that updated documentation specifically. It's not linked from admin portal and only available from that team directly. Are the Eagles going to win the Super Bowl? Absolutely, yes they are. Thank you for whoever chimed in with that. It's going to be great. Next one, let me go through here. Here's a really, really good question. Our Brink register says it's version 4.1.3136. What version is that? And I wanted to make sure we address this in some way to minimize confusion, because it's come up for me twice over the past 2 days. The version of Brink that is 4.1D is 4.1.3 anything is 4.1D. The iterative releases that we did before that were 4.1.2 and 4.1.1. And for those of you that are using 4.1A, which I believe is 95% of our customer base, you should be on something like 4.1.131, which was 4.1A. And so 4.1.3136 is 4.1D, and any derivative of 3000 as the third portion of this numbered value is how you set up, is how you know you're in 4.1D. All right. I think we've got time for a couple of more here. Are sounds supported on the workstation? Yes. So why you didn't hear the audio file on my side is because it's coming from my laptop. But if you're on a terminal that has a native speaker, we just use essentially the basic Windows controls and Windows audio support for that behavior. And so absolutely, if the speaker is on the terminal or on as a native part of the hardware, it will function on its own. You don't need an external. It's not required to have an external USB or audio jack connected if you have that onboard speaker. The kitchen controllers that we sell natively don't have a speaker, so you'll want to use USB in that standpoint. But there's lots of controllers that are going to be able to use, or lots of terminals where speakers are going to be able to be on board. Next one. I see lots of people asking questions about features that are coming in the next release, so I don't want to touch on those yet. But let me scroll back down to the bottom because we've had a few more come in. Questions around the punch integration. Yeah, there was some things that we considered bugs in the past because we essentially Brink was only set up to accept numeric values through the punch integration. As they enhanced their tool and added alphanumeric behavior to what they're tracking for redemption codes or identification, we have now supported that as well. So this should resolve any issues that were happening because of the alpha limitation directly. And so I see a few people chiming in with punch-specific questions that should all be alleviated with the upgrade to 4.1D. And I think we'll do one more here. Go back down and see what we have. Do we need to do anything on our side to activate new features, or will they be automatically enabled in our instance of Brink? Well, we never turn on a new capability by default. So there's never a circumstance where a checkbox is going to be checked for a feature that you weren't utilizing before once an upgrade occurs. There may be behavioral changes in what you experience. And an example of that would be what that I would consider would be the KDS auto combo display consolidation kind of flow that we saw, where if I have multiple combos in an order, it'll now just show me 2 combo number ones rather than combo number 1 and then combo number 1. You are already using the combo behavior, just is going to kind of subtotal them for you. Also, the just things like that where it's actually going to change just the intended function of that feature will change, but it's not, we'll never turn on something for you. Like we wouldn't turn on auto combo, for example. That's a checkbox that you can control and then you can utilize. But we don't ever go in and sometimes it seems like we turn something on by default just because of the behavioral change, but that's something that we strive never to do. All right, so give me 1 second. Okay, so last one here. Is there any way for active items to be in specific regions? That's a great question, and as of right now, no, you cannot activate an item with anything region specific, but you can do it location specific. Everything that you're publishing change sets at the group level is location specific. So if you utilize location groups to make up and designate what you consider a region, let's just say, California region, East Coast region, whatever it is, if you use location groups, you will have the ability to, just based on how you publish, activate an item within a certain location group and inactivate it within others. So while not region specific, because we don't track regions, there's no part of Brink that is something that you set up as a region. That's what we would consider location groups, and so location groups can be that method. But with that, we are out of time. I've hit the 11:30 mark, so what I'm going to do is pull up my last slide to thank you for joining us on today's webinar. Thank you, Mr. Rob Brinky, for that wonderful introduction earlier.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you. And again, as a follow-up, if you have any additional questions or comments, we're always looking to improve these. And if you've been with Brink a little while, you may have seen we're trying to do more webinars and more external communication. Our customer success team and the wonderful people in that group are constantly working to make that happen. So any feedback, good, bad, or otherwise, please feel free to success@partech.com, and that goes along with all questions as well. So with that, thank you everyone for your time today, and enjoy the rest of your day.